The Galactic Council chamber floated in the void like a suspended thought, vast, intricate, and impossibly precise. A station forged from crystallized starlight and quantum-locked alloys, its structure bent physics into architecture, turning space itself into a cathedral of governance. Inside the Grand Hall, representatives of 847 species assembled for the monthly convergence. No two delegates were alike. Some inhaled oxygen, others breathed methane, ammonia, or exotic atmospheric blends that would have dissolved an unprotected human in seconds. Some possessed bone and blood. Others were fields of energy, sentient gas clouds, or consciousnesses bound inside adaptive containment shells. Yet despite their differences, there was one shared instinct among them. A collective silence that always fell whenever Sector 7739 was mentioned, or, more accurately, whenever it was not mentioned at all. It was a subject that did not exist in official discourse. A gap in records, a blind spot in history, and the most carefully maintained absence in the entire Council archive. Today, that silence was joined by something new. Ambassador Krellis of the Vraxian Empire stood at the central dais for his first formal address. His deep purple scales shimmered under the chamber's adaptive lighting, each subtle shift in hue reflecting controlled biological emotion, confidence, certainty, and something sharper underneath. Ambition. His four eyes scanned the assembly, noting every reaction, every hesitation, every carefully concealed discomfort. The Vraxians were new to the Galactic Council, new enough to ask questions that older species had long since learned to avoid, new enough to mistake silence for ignorance, and dangerous enough to believe that nothing in the galaxy was truly off-limits, if one was bold enough to reach for it. Having joined only 10 cycles ago after conquering 40 star systems in just 20 years, they were warriors, proud and strong, and they feared nothing in the galaxy. Honored Council, Krells began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber through translator fields. I have a question that troubles my people. We have studied the star charts. We have reviewed the territorial claims, and we have found something strange. Matriarch Valara, the ancient silicon-based entity who led the council, shifted her crystalline body. She had been alive for 12,000 years, and she knew what question was coming. Every new species eventually asked it. There is a region of space, Krellis continued, pulling up a holographic map, that remains unmarked, unclaimed. No species has territory there. No trading routes pass through it. It is simply an empty. We call it Sector 7739. Why does the mighty Galactic Council ignore such a large area of space? Silence fell across the chamber. The elder species looked away. The younger ones leaned forward with interest. This was the question that should never be asked, yet always was. Felchar's voice resonated like crystal singing. That sector is not empty, Ambassador Krellis. It is occupied. By whom? Kix demanded. I see no designation, no territorial markers, no delegation in this council. By humans, Belshara said simply. The word hung in the air like a curse. Some species made sounds of discomfort. Others activated their privacy shields. The Vraxian ambassador looked around, confused by the reaction. Humans? He repeated. I have never heard of this species. Are they powerful? Do they have vast fleets? Great weapons? They have both. An older ambassador whispered from the shadows. And worse. Krell laughed. A harsh sound that his translator rendered as grinding stones. Then why are they not part of this council? Why do we avoid them? The Vraxian Empire has defeated armies twice our size. We have conquered worlds that others said could not be taken. We fear nothing. Belshara moved closer to the Vraxian ambassador. Even though she had no face as organic species understood it, her presence radiated something like sadness. Or perhaps it was pity. 800 years ago, she began, humanity reached the stars. They were young, aggressive, and their technology was crude but effective. We welcomed them as we welcome all new species. We invited them to join the council. We offered them the benefits of galactic civilization. And Krells prompted. And they refused to disarm. Felchara continued. You see, Ambassador, every species in this council has agreed to certain rules. We limit our weapons. We fight our wars with honor and restraint. We do not destroy planets. We do not exterminate entire populations. We do not use certain technologies that are too dangerous. Sounds weak, Kills muttered. Humans did not agree with these rules, Belshara said. They looked at our civilization and called us naive. They said that any species that limited its own weapons would eventually be conquered by one that did not. So they refused to join us unless they could keep all their weapons, all their technology, all their methods of war. Then why not force them? Klex asked. Surely the combined might of the Council could have brought one primitive species to heel. Belshara's crystalline body seemed to dim. 40 species tried, Ambassador. 40 species formed a coalition to quarantine humanity, to force them to accept our rules. It was called the Civilizing War. It lasted 7 years, and humanity surrendered. No, Belchara said quietly. 3 of those 40 species no longer exist. 5 more lost half their populations. 12 suffered damage that took them centuries to recover from. And humanity. Humanity lost millions but never surrendered. In the end, we begged them for peace. Krill stared at the ancient matriarch. Surely, she was exaggerating. 1 species could not defeat 40. It was impossible. The Treaty of Titan's Moon, Velar continued, was our salvation. Humanity agreed to isolate themselves. They would claim a region of space, mark its borders, and never leave it. In exchange, we agreed to never enter their space, never contact them, and never speak of them to new species. That sounds like we imprisoned them, Krellick said. That is what we told ourselves, Velshara admitted. But the truth is different. We gave them what they wanted to be left alone, and they gave us what we needed to face them in war again. Captain Isa Krellick's military advisor stepped forward. She was smaller than the ambassador, but covered in battle scars. Matriarch with respect. This was 800 years ago. Species change. Technology advances. Perhaps these humans are not the threat they once were. That is what worries me, Belshara said. 800 years of isolation. 800 years to develop their weapons without our restrictions. 800 years to prepare. No, Captain. I fear they are far more dangerous now than they were then. Krells waved a dismissive claw. Stories. Old fears. The Vraxian Empire does not make decisions based on ancient myths. We deal in facts. The facts are simple, Valara said. There are warning buoys along the entire border of human space. 12 different dead languages tell visitors to go no further. We place those buoys. The humans did not ask for them. We put them there to remind ourselves of what happened when we broke the peace. Then the humans are prisoners in their own space, Krell said triumphantly. They cannot expand. They cannot grow. Eventually they will stagnate and die. Or they already have. Perhaps, Velshara said. Or perhaps they are thriving in ways we cannot imagine. We have no way to know. That was the agreement. Krell's turned to address the full council. I propose we send a diplomatic mission to human space. It has been 8 centuries. Surely enough time has passed. We can make contact, assess the situation, and either welcome them to the council, or what? Falara asked sharply. Or claim the territory, if they are extinct. Krellix finished. It is a waste to leave such a large sector empty based on old fears. The council erupted in argument. Some species agreed with Krells. They had never seen humans and found it hard to fear them. Others, the older races who remembered, shouted against the idea. It was madness. They said the treaty must be honored, but the Vraxian Empire was powerful, and they had many allies among the younger species. After hours of debate, no consensus was reached. Krellix left the council chamber with his head held high. He had planted the seed of doubt. Now he just needed to let it grow. 3 weeks later, Krell stood on the bridge of the warship Dominion's Fist. Behind him, arranged in perfect formation, were 199 more Vraxian warships. It was the largest fleet the Empire had assembled in decades. Each ship carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. Their shields could withstand direct hits from fusion weapons. Their crews were trained, experienced, and ready for anything. Ambassador, Captain Issa said from her command station. Are you certain about this? The Council specifically voted against this mission. The Council voted for nothing, Krells corrected. They could not agree. That means we are free to act. Besides, we are not violating the treaty. We are not invading. We are simply visiting. The matriarch will be furious. The matriarch is old and afraid, Krell said. It is time for younger, bolder species to lead. Humanity is hidden long enough. Today we will find the truth about these ghosts that haunt the Council's dreams. Captain Issa said nothing, but her claws tightened on her command chair. Something felt wrong about this, but orders were orders, and her duty was to the Empire. All ships report ready, Ambassador, the communications officer announced. Then let us make history, Krellix declared. Set course for Sector 7739, maximum speed. Today, the Vraxian Empire will be the first to enter human space in 800 years. The fleet turned as one, their engines blazing with power. They accelerated toward the border, toward the ancient warning buoys that still broadcast their messages in dead languages. As they passed the first buoy, its message washed over them in 12 different tongues, but the translators could only make out fragments. Go no further. Death awaits. Kentucky. They do not forgive. Krellix laughed at the warnings. Dramatic, he said. The ancients certainly knew how to inspire fear, but we are Vraxians. We do not frighten easily. The fleet crossed into Sector 7739 without incident. Their sensors swept the space ahead, looking for defenses, for weapons, for any sign of the terrifying humans they had been warned about. They found nothing. Sensor report, Captain Issa ordered. Empty space, Captain, the sensor officer replied. No ships, no stations, no defensive satellites, nothing but natural stellar bodies. They're not even watching their own border, Krill said with disbelief. Either they are extremely confident, or extremely primitive, or extremely clever, Issa muttered. But the ambassador ignored her. They pushed deeper into human space, jumping from system to system. 15 light-years into the sector, they still found nothing. No patrols, no warnings, no contact at all. It was as if humanity had simply vanished. Perhaps the matriarch was right, one of the officers suggested. Perhaps they did die out. 800 years is a long time for a species that was so warlike. They may have destroyed themselves. Then we will claim this territory for the Empire, Krell said. Search for any signs of habitation. Ruins, old stations, anything that proves humans were here. It took 2 more days of searching, but finally they found it. A yellow star with 9 planets. Their sensors detected orbital structures around the 3rd planet. Massive space stations and signs of industrial activity. Energy readings were everywhere. This was not a dead system. This was inhabited. Life signs, Krillix demanded. Scanning. I'm reading approximately 12 billion individuals on the 3rd planet and surrounding structures. Carbon-based, similar to 60% of known species. Their technology appears to be interesting, inferior to ours in some ways. Yes, their power generation is less efficient. Their faster-than-light drives are slower, but their communication networks are incredibly dense, and I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures I cannot identify. 12 billion, Krell said thoughtfully. That's small. The Vraxian homeworld alone has 80 billion. These humans are not as numerous as the old story suggested. Should we make contact? Captain Issa asked. Of course, Krell said. That's why we came. Helm, take us into orbit around the 3rd planet. All ships battle formation. I want them to see our strength. Let them understand that the galaxy has changed since they hid themselves away. The Vraxian fleet moved toward Earth. 200 warships, arranged in an intimidating display of military power. As they entered orbit, their sensors picked up dozens of space stations, satellite networks, and smaller ships moving between them. It was clearly an advanced civilization, but nothing that seemed threatening. Broadcast on all frequencies, Krellix ordered. Tell them we come in the name of the Galactic Council and the Vraxian Empire. Tell them it is time to talk. Before the message could be sent, a single ship appeared on their sensors. It was small compared to their dreadnoughts, maybe a quarter of the size. Its design was angular, aggressive, covered in what looked like weapon ports. The ship moved toward them with surprising speed. That's a military vessel, Captain Issa said. Old design, maybe 200 years based on the hull configuration. It's called the Remembrance One ship, Krellix laughed. They send one ship to meet a fleet of 200. These humans have courage. I'll give them that. Or they're suicidal. The human ship stopped several thousand kilometers away. A communication request came through. Krells accepted it, curious to see these legendary warriors who had terrified the galaxy centuries ago. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human female. She had dark hair tied back from her face, brown skin, and eyes that seemed to look straight through the display into Krellix's soul. She wore a military uniform, dark blue with silver insignia, Her face was calm, but there was something in her expression that made Captain Isa's scales tingle with warning. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said, her voice cold and clear. "You have violated the Treaty of Titan's Moon. You have entered human space without permission. You have one chance to leave peacefully. Turn your ships around and exit our territory. You have 60 minutes. Krell stared at her, then burst into laughter. "You dare give me orders, human? I am Ambassador Krellix of the Vraxian Empire. Behind me are 200 warships, each capable of destroying your entire orbital infrastructure. You have one small, outdated destroyer. I suggest you choose your next words carefully." Captain Chen's expression did not change. 59 minutes. "Listen to me, human," Krellix said, his voice hardening. "Your species has been hiding for 800 years, while the galaxy moved forward. The Council has forgotten you. New powers have risen. The Vraxian Empire alone controls more territory than your entire species ever claimed. We came here to offer you a choice. Join the modern galaxy. Submit to our protection and prosper. Or refuse, and be swept aside by history." 58 minutes, Chen said. "I will not repeat myself again." "You don't understand your position," Krell said. "Allow me to demonstrate." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target one of those abandoned orbital platforms, the one at coordinate 772. Destroy it." "Sir, that's not," Captain Isa began. "Do it," Krell's ordered. One of the Vraxian dreadnoughts powered up its main weapon. A beam of concentrated plasma shot across space, striking the orbital platform. For a moment, the platform's shields held. Then they collapsed. The structure exploded in a brilliant flash, debris scattering into space. Krellix turned back to Captain Chen. "Do you see? That platform had shields, and we destroyed it in seconds. What do you think we could do to your planet?" Captain Chen's face had changed. Her calm expression was gone, replaced by something that looked like ice. Her eyes were hard, and when she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made even Krellix hesitate. "That platform was not abandoned," she said quietly. "It was a memorial. 300 people died there in an accident, 200 years ago. We kept it as a grave. You just desecrated the resting place of 300 souls." Krellix started, but Chen continued. "You came here with your fleet to intimidate us. You came here thinking we would bow to your strength. You came here believing the old stories were exaggerations. Ambassador Krell of the Vraxian Empire, you have made 3 mistakes today." "And what are those?" Krellix asked, his confidence wavering. "Your first mistake was entering our space. Your second mistake was threatening us. Your third mistake was firing a weapon in our system." Captain Chen leaned forward. "You have declared war on humanity. God help you, because we won't." The communication ended. The holographic display went dark. For a moment, the bridge of the Dominion's fist was silent. Then, Captain Isa screamed, "All ships, battle stations, raise shields, power weapons." "What are you?" Krell started. The sensor displays lit up like stars being born. Ships appeared on every screen. Not dozens, not hundreds. Thousands of ships materialized out of empty space, surrounding the Vraxian fleet on all sides. They had been there all along, invisible, waiting. "Where did they come from?" Krellix whispered. "They were cloaked," the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. "Stealth technology beyond anything I've ever seen. They've been watching us since we entered the system. Maybe since we crossed the border. They were always here." Captain Isa looked at her screens and felt her blood run cold. This wasn't first contact. This was an execution. The humans had let them come. Let them make their threats. Let them fire their weapon. And now they would show the Vraxians why the Galactic Council had been so afraid. Ambassador Captain Isa said quietly, "I think we just learned why no one enters human space." The human ships began to move, and the Vraxian fleet realized too late that they had not discovered the humans. The humans had allowed themselves to be found, and now the galaxy was about to remember why they had agreed to never return. The Vraxian fleet hung in space, surrounded by thousands of human ships that had appeared like ghosts. On the bridge of the Dominion's fist, Ambassador Krellix stood frozen, his 4 eyes trying to process what the sensors were showing. It was impossible. No species could hide this many ships. No stealth technology was this perfect. "Count," Captain Isa demanded, her voice tight with controlled fear. "I'm reading. 3,217 ships," the sensor officer reported. "Wait. More are appearing. 3,500, 4,000. They're still materializing. That's more than our entire military has. Another officer whispered. Krells found his voice. Impossible. Scan them. What class are they? Are they real, or just projections? They're real, sir. I'm reading power signatures, life signs, weapon charges. The ships vary in size. Most are smaller than our dreadnoughts, but there are at least 50 that match or exceed our largest vessels. And Ambassador, their weapons are hot. They're ready to fire. Captain Issa looked at the tactical display. The human ships had arranged themselves in a sphere around the Vraxian fleet. There was no gap, no weak point, no escape route. It was a perfect kill box. Whoever commanded the human forces knew exactly what they were doing. Open communications to all ships, Krellix ordered. We need to organize a defensive formation. We can fight our way out of this. Sir, incoming transmission from the human flagship, the communications officer said. Put it on screen, Captain Issa said. Before Krellix could speak, Captain Chen appeared again, but this time she was on what looked like a command bridge. Behind her, dozens of officers worked at stations, their movements efficient and practiced. This was not a crew that was scrambling to respond. This was a crew that had been ready for war long before the Vraxians arrived. Ambassador Krells, Chen said, I gave you 60 minutes to leave. You have now had 5 minutes to contemplate your situation. I will explain what happens next, because I want you to understand exactly what you have done. Captain Chen, please. There has been a misunderstanding. Krells began. There has been no misunderstanding, Chen interrupted. You entered our space with a military fleet. You made threats. You destroyed a memorial. You fired a weapon in our sovereign territory. In human law, these are acts of war. We are now at war with the Vraxian Empire. We did not mean to start a war, Krellix protested. We came to make contact to open dialogue. You brought 200 warships to a diplomatic mission. Chen's voice was ice. Ambassador, we have been monitoring your communications since you crossed our border. We heard your plans. You came here to intimidate us, to force us to submit or to claim our territory if we were gone. You came as conquerors, not diplomats. Captain Issa stepped forward. Captain Chen, I am Captain Issa of the Vraxian military. I accept responsibility for this incursion. If you must punish someone, punish me. Let my fleet withdraw. Chen looked at Issa for a long moment. Captain, I respect your courage. But this is not about punishment. This is about survival. 800 years ago, the Galactic Council learned a hard lesson. Species that enter human space do not leave. We made a treaty that guaranteed our isolation and their safety. Your empire has broken that treaty. Now we will remind the galaxy why that treaty exists. You would kill us all, Krellix asked, his voice shaking. Thousands of soldiers who are just following orders. You fired first, Chen said simply. You destroyed a memorial. You showed us that you came here to hurt us. We will not give you a second chance to do worse. The transmission ended immediately. The human ships began to move. They didn't swarm or charge. They moved with precise coordination, maintaining their formation, while slowly tightening the sphere. All ships, battle formation Delta, Captain Issa ordered. Concentrate fire on the closest human vessels. We break through one section and run for the border. The Vraxian fleet began to move, their ships grouping together and turning toward what looked like the weakest part of the human formation. Their weapons powered up, shields at maximum. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. Fire, Issa commanded. 200 Vraxian warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma beams, missile volleys, and kinetic projectiles shot toward the human ships. The space between the fleets lit up with weapons fire. It should have been enough to overwhelm the humans in that sector. It should have punched a hole through their line, but the human ships simply weren't there anymore. They moved faster than anything the Vraxians had ever seen, accelerating and changing direction in ways that should have turned their crews into paste from the G-forces. The Vraxian weapons struck empty space. How are they moving like that? An officer shouted. Inertial dampeners beyond our technology, the science officer reported. Their ships can pull maneuvers that would kill us, and their crews don't even feel it. It's like they're not following the same laws of physics. Then the humans returned fire. The first indication something was wrong came when the shields on the dreadnought warrior's pride simply vanished. Not collapsed, vanished. One moment, they were at full power. The next, they were gone. Then the ship itself came apart, torn open from bow to stern, by something moving so fast the sensors barely registered it. "What hit them?" Krell screamed. "Kinetic projectile," the sensor officer said, his voice shaking. "Traveling at N5 light speed. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and missiles. This went through them like they weren't there. More Vraxian ships died. The humans were using relativistic kill vehicles. Chunks of metal accelerated to near light speed. Each impact released more energy than a nuclear weapon. Ships didn't just break apart, they vaporized. Return fire. Target their launchers," Captain Issa ordered. The Varaxians tried, but hitting the human ships was like trying to catch smoke. They dodged, weaved, and moved in patterns that seemed random, but clearly weren't. Every few seconds, another human ship would fire, and another Vraxian vessel would die. "Antimatter signatures," the science officer shouted. "They're using antimatter missiles. That's forbidden by Galactic Convention," Krell said. "They're not part of the Galactic Convention," Issa reminded him bitterly. The antimatter missiles struck 3 Vraxian ships at once. The explosions were so bright that the bridge displays automatically dimmed to protect the crew's eyes. When they could see again, the 3 ships were simply gone. Not destroyed, erased from existence, along with several thousand tons of nearby debris. "We've lost 20 ships in 4 minutes, an officer reported. "Casualties are everyone aboard those ships. No survivors. Concentrate shields on the starboard side. All ships full power to defense," Issa commanded. But then something worse happened. The Vraxian ships began firing on each other. The dreadnought Stormhammer turned its weapons on its sister ship and opened fire at point-blank range. 3 more ships followed, attacking their own fleet. "What are they doing?" Krells demanded. "Their systems are compromised," the communications officer said, frantically working his console. "I'm detecting intrusion programs in our network. The humans are hacking us. They're taking control of our ships. How is that possible? Our systems are isolated, encrypted, protected by AI firewalls. Their AI is better than ours, sir. Much better. It's rewriting our code faster than our defenses can adapt. I'm trying to shut down our network connections." But the lights on the Dominion's fist flickered. Displays went dark, then came back online. For a moment, Krells thought their own ship had been compromised. But the human attack had only been a probe, a demonstration of what they could do if they wanted. 47 ships lost, the tactical officer reported. "We're down to 153 operational vessels. Damage reports coming in from all sectors. Admiral, we can't win this." Captain Issa looked at the display. The truth was clear. They were being toyed with. The humans could have destroyed the entire fleet in the first minute. Instead, they were taking their time, killing ships one by one, showing the Vraxians exactly how outmatched they were. "All ships full retreat," Issa ordered. "Scatter pattern Omega jump to FTL as soon as possible." "We can't just run," Krellix protested. "We don't have a choice," Issa snapped. "They're killing us. Every second we stay here, more of our people die." The Vraxian fleet tried to scatter, each ship choosing a different direction to flee. But the human sphere was ready for that too. Every time a Vraxian ship tried to accelerate to FTL speed, human ships were already in position to intercept. The kill box was perfect. "They're predicting our movements," the navigation officer said. "No matter where we try to go, they're already there." "Then we fight," Issa said quietly. "If we can't run, we fight until they kill us or let us go." All ships form defensive sphere back to back. Make them pay for every ship they take. The remaining Rexian vessels pulled together, forming a tight ball with their strongest shields facing outward. It was a desperate move, but it was all they had left. They fired everything they had at the surrounding humans, hoping to overwhelm them with sheer volume. The battle raged for hours. The Vraxians fought with courage, with desperation, with everything they had, and slowly, steadily, they died. The humans dismantled them ship by ship, using tactics that were clearly designed not just to destroy, but to terrify. They would disable a ship's weapons, but leave life support, letting the crew watch their fleet die around them. They would hack into communications and broadcast the screams of dying Vraxians across all frequencies. They were sending a message, and that message was clear. This is what happens when you enter human space. By the 8th hour of battle, only 60 Vexian ships remained. Krell sat on the floor of the bridge, his scales pale with shock. Captain Issa was wounded, green blood seeping through her uniform, but she refused medical attention. She needed to see this through to bear witness to what her crew endured. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer said weakly. "It's Captain Chen." "Put it on," Issa said. Chen appeared on the screen. She looked tired, but her voice was still strong. "Captain Issa, you and your people have fought well. You have courage. That is why I am going to offer you something we rarely give. A choice." "What choice?" Issa asked. "One ship will be allowed to survive," Chen said. "One ship will be allowed to leave human space. That ship will carry a message back to the Galactic Council, back to the Vraxian Empire, back to everyone who thinks the old warnings were just stories. The rest of your fleet will die here. Choose which ship lives." Krell stood up, his legs shaking. "Let me go. I am the ambassador. It is my responsibility." "No," Chen said. "Not you, ambassador. You started this war with your arrogance. You will witness what arrogance costs, but you will not be the one to spread the warning. Captain Issa, you tried to stop this. You understood the danger. You will be our messenger." "I won't leave my crew," Issa said. "You will," Chen replied. "Because if you don't, everyone dies. All 60 ships. Give the order, Captain. Tell your crew to evacuate to one vessel. You have 10 minutes." Issa looked at the faces of her bridge crew. They had followed her into this disaster. They deserved better than to die in a war they didn't start. "All ships," she said into the fleet-wide channel. "Evacuate to the destroyer Swift Revenge. Transfer all critical personnel and wounded. You have 9 minutes." There was chaos as ships began moving close to each other. Shuttles and teleporters working overtime to move personnel. Some ships were too damaged to evacuate. Some crews stayed behind voluntarily, giving up their spots for the wounded. In the end, nearly 4,000 Vexians crammed into a destroyer designed for 300. Krellix tried to board the Swift Revenge, but Captain Issa stopped him. "You wanted to make history, Ambassador. You wanted to be bold. Now you will watch what boldness costs. You stay with me." When the 9 minutes were up, the Swift Revenge separated from the fleet. The human ships opened a narrow corridor in their formation, just wide enough for one vessel. The destroyer moved through it slowly, its crew silent, watching their fellow ships grow smaller in the distance. On the Dominion's fist, Krellix and the remaining Vraxians waited for death. But first, Captain Chen appeared on their screens one last time. "Ambassador Krells," she said, "before you die, I want you to understand something. 800 years ago, the Galactic Council demanded we disarm. They said our weapons were too brutal, our methods too cruel. They said we needed to be civilized. We refused, and they attacked us." She gestured behind her, and the screen split to show archived footage. Humans fighting against overwhelming odds. Cities burning under alien weapons. Human ships, primitive and small, ramming into enemy dreadnoughts because they had no other weapons left. Children being trained to fight. Entire planets mobilized for total war. "They thought they were teaching us a lesson," Chen continued. "They thought we would surrender once we understood their superiority. But humans do not surrender. We adapt. We evolve. We learn. And most importantly, we remember." The footage changed, showing human technology advancing, ships growing larger, more deadly, weapons being developed that made the Galactic Council's arsenals look like toys. Humans didn't just fight, they transformed war into a science. "We spent 800 years alone," Chen said. "While you explored the galaxy, we explored the boundaries of military technology. While you made peace among yourselves, we made ourselves into the perfect weapon. We didn't do this because we wanted to conquer. We did it because we wanted to ensure that no one would ever conquer us." "Please," Krellix whispered. "We understand. We were wrong. Let us go." "You destroyed a memorial," Chen said, her voice hard. 300 people rested there. You turned their grave into a demonstration of power. For that alone, you deserve what comes next. But this is not about vengeance. This is about sending a message." She leaned forward, and her next words were spoken slowly, clearly, so there could be no misunderstanding. "No species enters human space. That is the rule. That has always been the rule. You came here thinking you could change it. Now you will die knowing you were wrong. And the galaxy will remember what happens when the rule is broken." The transmission ended. The human ships began their final attack. This time there was no testing, no demonstration, no measured response. They fired everything at once. The sky filled with weapons fire, so dense that space itself seemed to tear apart. Ambassador Krelix watched as the Dominion's fist came apart around him. The last thing he saw before the hull breached was the face of Captain Issa on a screen, watching from the swift Revenge as it jumped to FTL speed. She was crying, and he realized she was crying for him, for all of them, for the waste of it all. Then there was light, heat, and nothing. On the swift Revenge, Captain Issa stood on the bridge as they emerged from FTL, far from human space. Behind them, the human fleet remained at the border, silent guardians of a territory that had just reminded the galaxy why it was forbidden. In her hand, she held a data core. Captain Chen had given it to her before they left. On that core was everything: the full history of the civilizing war, the Treaty of Titan's moon, and complete footage of what had just happened to the Vraxian fleet. It was proof. It was warning. It was the message she had to deliver. "Set course for the Galactic Council," Issa said quietly. "Maximum speed. The galaxy needs to see this." As the swift Revenge limped away, carrying its cargo of survivors and terrible knowledge, the human ships remained in formation around the Sol system. Their watch continued as it had for 800 years. They had broken their isolation only long enough to remind the universe why that isolation existed. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking at the debris field where 153 Varaxian ships had died. She felt no joy in the victory, only a deep sadness that it had been necessary. "Captain," her first officer said quietly, "do you think they'll listen this time?" "Some will," Chen said. "Some won't. There's always someone who thinks they're different, who thinks they're smarter or stronger than the species that came before. We'll be here when they come. How long will we have to do this?" Chen looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy beyond their borders. Somewhere out there, civilizations rose and fell, wars were fought, peace was made. But here in human space, there was only vigilance. "Forever," she said softly. "Well, do this forever, if we have to. Because the alternative is surrendering our freedom, and humans will never do that. We chose isolation over subjugation. We chose strength over acceptance. And we'll defend that choice against anyone who challenges it." She turned away from the window. "Stand down from battle stations. Resume normal patrol patterns, and someone clean up that debris field. Give those Vraxians the dignity of a proper grave. They were fools, but they were brave fools. That deserves respect." As the human fleet dispersed, returning to their hidden positions throughout the Sol system, one fact remained clear. The treaty held, not because humanity was weak, but because humanity was terrifyingly strong. The border existed not to contain them, but to protect everyone else. And the galaxy was about to remember that lesson once again. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the holographic display showed the final moments of the Vraxian fleet. 847 species watched, as ship after ship was torn apart by human weapons. They watched as the swift Revenge escaped through a corridor of human vessels. They watched as Ambassador Krelix and over 40,000 Vraxians died in a battle that lasted less than 12 hours. Captain Issa stood before them, her scales still pale from blood loss and trauma. She had not slept in 3 days. She had traveled straight from human space to the Council, driven by a desperate need to prevent anyone else from making the same mistake. "This is what happens," she said quietly, her voice carrying through the translator fields. "When you ignore the warnings, this is what happens when you think you are strong enough, smart enough, different enough." The humans have spent 800 years preparing for this moment. They were not surprised. They were not frightened. They were ready. Matriarch Valara's crystalline form pulsed with a dim light. "Captain Issa, you have our deepest sympathies for your loss. But we must understand, did you provoke this attack? Did Ambassador Krells do something to anger the humans?" "He destroyed a memorial," Issa said. "A platform where 300 humans died 2 centuries ago. He used it as a demonstration of our weapons to show we were superior." She looked around the chamber. "The humans consider their dead sacred. We desecrated a grave. In their eyes, we declared war. But surely a young ambassador from the Terran Collective spoke up. The response was disproportionate. To destroy an entire fleet over one memorial." Issa turned to look at the Terran. "You saw the battle. Do you think that was the humans fighting at full strength? They had over 4,000 ships surrounding us. They used maybe a tenth of their weapons. They could have destroyed us all in minutes. Instead, they took ours. They wanted us to understand, truly understand that we never had a chance. The holographic display changed, showing the data Koro's full contents. Images from 800 years ago appeared. The civilizing war. The council members watched as their ancestors' fleets attacked human colonies. They watched human cities burn. They watched as humanity, fighting against overwhelming odds, slowly turned the tide of the war. We always knew humans were dangerous, an elder member spoke. But we thought time would soften them. We thought 800 years of isolation would make them weaker, more vulnerable. It did the opposite. Issa said, every human child learns military strategy in school. Every civilian knows how to use weapons. Every station can become a fortress in minutes. They have turned their entire civilization into a military force, waiting to be activated. And their technology. She pulled up more data. They use antimatter weapons banned by every galactic convention. They have artificial intelligence that can hack our most secure systems in seconds. They have ships that can accelerate and maneuver at speeds that would kill any of us. Their stealth technology is so advanced that they were watching us from the moment we crossed their border. And we never saw them. How is their stealth so effective? A scientist from the Quillian Assembly asked. Our best sensors should have detected something. They bend light around their ships, Issa explained. Not with shields or fields, but by manipulating space-time itself. To our sensors, there's nothing there. Not empty space. Literally nothing. No energy signature, no mass reading, nothing. They don't hide their ships. They remove them from our ability to perceive reality. The chamber erupted in panicked conversation. Species that had been confident in their defensive abilities suddenly realized that humans could be anywhere watching, listening, and they would never know. Matriarch Valara raised her crystal in arms, and the chamber fell silent. Captain Issa, in your professional military opinion, could the combined forces of the Galactic Council defeat humanity and open war? Issa was quiet for a long moment. Every eye in the chamber was on her. She thought about her crew, her friends, the 40,000 Voraxians who had died. She thought about the cold efficiency of the human attack, the perfect coordination, the overwhelming technological superiority. No, she said finally, we would lose. Even if every species contributed their full military might, even if we had numerical superiority of 1,000 to 1, we would lose. Humans have spent 8 centuries doing nothing but preparing for war. They have no trade routes to defend, no diplomatic relations to maintain, no internal politics to distract them. They have one purpose, to ensure no one can ever conquer them. They have perfected it. That cannot be true, the Vraxian High General said from the embassy section. You are traumatized, Captain. You saw your fleet destroyed. But surely combined council forces, General. Issa interrupted, her voice hard. I watched human ships move in ways that should be impossible. I watched them fire weapons that our shields could not stop. I watched them take control of our computers, as if our security meant nothing. And I watched them do all of this, while using only a fraction of their fleet. They have 4,000 ships in just one system. The data core shows they have 50 colonized systems. How many ships do you think they have total? 10,000? 50,000? 100,000? The silence that followed was absolute. The math was simple and terrifying. If humanity had even 10,000 ships with the technology Issa described, they could conquer a significant portion of the galaxy before anyone could stop them. Why haven't they? A voice asked from the upper gallery. It was Ambassador Thren of the Peaceful Consoria, a species that had never fought a war. If they are so powerful, why haven't they left their territory? Why haven't they conquered us? Because they don't want to. Issa said that's what makes them truly dangerous. They're not conquerors. They're survivors. They don't want our territory or our resources. They just want to be left alone. The Treaty of Titan's Moon gave them that. As long as we honor it, they honor it. They're not interested in war, but they're always ready for it. Matriarch Valara turned to the full council. We must vote on a response. Do we honor the treaty and reinforce the border, or do we consider the Vraxian fleet destruction an act of war and respond in kind? War? The Vraxian High General shouted. They killed 40,000 of our citizens. This cannot stand. But Captain Issa stepped forward. General, with respect, they killed 40,000 who invaded their territory. We broke the treaty. We fired first. We desecrated their memorial. By any standard of interstellar law, they acted in self-defense. If we go to war over this, we are the aggressors, and we will lose. You are a coward, the general said coldly. I am a realist, Issa replied. I was there. You were not. I watched them kill us like we were nothing. If you want to send more Vraxians to die, that is your choice. But I will not support it. I will not lead soldiers into a war we cannot win against an enemy who only wants peace. The Vraxian High General stood and stormed out of the chamber. But Issa's words had struck a chord with many of the other species. They had seen the footage, they had heard her testimony, and they understood that this was not about pride or honor. It was about survival. For 3 days, the council debated. War faction argued that allowing humans to destroy a council fleet without response would make them look weak. Peace faction argued that the Vraxians had violated the treaty and deserved their fate. Neutral species tried to find a middle ground. During those 3 days, something else happened. The data core Captain Issa had brought contained more than just battle footage. It contained 800 years of human history. Species throughout the galaxy began to study it, to understand what humanity had become during their isolation. They learned about human culture, which seemed to glorify warriors and sacrifice. They learned about human entertainment, which was filled with stories of underdog victories and never surrendering. They learned about human philosophy, which held that freedom was worth any price, including death. But most disturbing of all, they learned about human weapons development. The data core showed a timeline of technology advancement that made galactic scientists weep. Humans had not stagnated, they had exploded forward. Every year they invented something new, something deadlier, something more efficient at killing. They weaponized everything, a Quillian scientist reported to the council. Technologies we use for mining, they use for weapons. Technologies we use for medicine, they use to develop biological agents. Technologies we use for communication, they use for cyber warfare. Every single advancement in human civilization has a military application. They think in terms of weaponization by default. That's insane. Someone said that's survival. Captain Issa corrected. They were attacked by 40 species. They learned that peace is not given, it must be defended. So they defend it with everything they have. On the 3rd day of debate, something unexpected happened. A transmission came from the edge of human space. It was broadcast to the entire Galactic Council on all frequencies. Captain Sarah Chen appeared on screens across the galaxy. People of the Galactic Council, she said, I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. 800 years ago, our species signed the Treaty of Titan's Moon. We agreed to isolate ourselves, to remain in our designated space, and to never interfere with galactic affairs. In exchange, you agreed to never enter our territory, to never attack us, and to leave us in peace. She paused, and her expression was grave. The Vraxan Empire broke that treaty. They entered our space with a military fleet. They made threats. They fired weapons. They destroyed a memorial to our dead. By the laws of war that we know, by the terms of the treaty itself, we were justified in defending ourselves. We did so. The result is what you have all seen. The transmission showed images of the battle, but from human perspectives. It showed Vraxian ships firing first. It showed the destroyed memorial. It showed everything that led to the human response. We do not seek conflict, Chen continued. We never did. 800 years ago, we asked only to be allowed our own way of life, our own methods, our own choices. The council refused. They demanded we change to fit their ideals. We refused. War resulted. The treaty ended that war. She leaned forward, and her next words carried weight. We will honor that treaty. We will remain in our space. We will not expand. We will not attack. We will not conquer. But we will defend ourselves against anyone who threatens us. The borders exist for your protection, not ours. Remember that. Then her expression softened slightly. I know some of you are debating war. I know some of you think you must respond to save face or honor. I ask you not to make that mistake. We don't want to fight you. We don't want to kill you. We want only to be left alone. Give us that, and we give you peace. Force us to fight, and we give you annihilation. The transmission showed one final image. Earth, beautiful and blue, floating in space. Around it, barely visible, were the defensive platforms, the orbital stations, the thousands of ships that protected it. This is our home, Chen said softly. We will defend it with everything we have, everything we are, and everything we can become. Choose peace. Choose to honor the treaty. Choose to let us remain as we are. because the alternative benefits no one. The transmission ended. The council chamber was absolutely silent. Some members were frightened, some were angry, but most were thoughtful. They had heard not a threat, but a plea. Humanity did not want war. They were offering peace, but from a position of absolute strength. Matriarch Valara spoke into the silence. I propose a vote. All in favor of reaffirming the Treaty of Titan's Moon, of strengthening the border protocols, and of declaring human space permanently off-limits to all Council species. Indicate now. Lights began to appear throughout the chamber. Green for yes, red for no, amber for abstain. Captain Issa held her breath, watching as the votes tallied. When the count was complete, the result was clear. 691 votes for peace, 156 votes for war. The treaty would stand. The Vraxian delegation walked out of the chamber. They had voted for war, and they had lost. Captain Issa did not walk out with them. She stayed, standing before the council, knowing she had just betrayed her own people in their eyes, but saved them in reality. Captain Issa, Matriarch Valara said gently, you have lost your fleet, your crew, and now you're standing in your own empire. What will you do now? Issa looked up at the ancient matriarch. I will make sure this never happens again. I will travel to every world, every species, every military academy, and I will tell them what I saw. I will make them understand that the warnings are not myths, the borders are not suggestions, and humans are not to be tested. That is a heavy burden to carry alone, Belshara said. I won't be alone. Issa replied. There are 4,000 survivors from my fleet. Many of them will help me. We'll make sure the galaxy remembers what happens when you enter human space. Over the following weeks, new protocols were established. The border around human space was reinforced with additional warning buoys. Autonomous defense systems were placed along the perimeter, not to attack humans trying to leave, but to stop anyone trying to enter. Every species was required to update their star charts with multiple layers of warnings. Most importantly, the full history of the civilizing war and the recent Vraxian incident was made mandatory study material for all military MEs in the galaxy. New officers would learn about humanity from day one. They would understand that the borders existed for a reason. Captain Issa began her journey, traveling from world to world, telling her story. At first, many dismissed her as a failure, someone making excuses, but she always had the data core, always had the footage, always had the proof. And slowly minds changed. She spoke at the Terran War College, showing future officers how quickly human tactics adapted. She spoke at the Terran War College, demonstrating human technology that seemed impossible. She spoke at gatherings of civilian leaders explaining why the treaty protected them. And always she ended with the same words. Humans are not evil. They are not monsters. They are survivors who will do anything to remain free. Respect that, and they will never threaten you. Challenge that, and they will destroy you. The choice is always yours, but choose wisely. 6 months after the incident, something remarkable happened. A young species called the Drian, who had just achieved faster-than-light travel, asked the council about human space. They wanted to know why such a large region was restricted. Instead of the usual vague warnings, the council showed them everything: the civilizing war, the treaty, the Vraxian fleet, Captain Issa's testimony. By the time they finished, the Drian ambassador was pale. We understand, he said quietly. We will honor the treaty. We will teach our people about the borders, and we will never make the mistake of thinking we are special. This became the new standard. Every species that joined the council, every new civilization that reached the stars, was taught about humanity immediately, not as a ghost story, not as a vague warning, but as historical fact. The galaxy had neighbors who wanted only to be left alone, and had the power to enforce that wish. In human space, Captain Sarah Chen received reports of the council's vote and the new protocols. She stood in her office looking at Earth through the viewport and allowed herself a small smile. Captain, her first officer said, do you think they'll actually keep the treaty this time? For a while, Chen replied. Maybe a long while. Eventually, someone will forget, or think they're different, or decide to test us again. It's inevitable. Pride and curiosity always win, eventually, and when that happens, Chen turned from the window, her expression serious. We'll be ready. We're always ready. That's our burden. That's our choice. We chose freedom over acceptance. We chose strength over friendship. And every time someone tests that choice, we have to prove we meant it. Do you ever regret it? The first officer asked quietly. The isolation, never being part of the larger galaxy. Chen considered the question. Sometimes, she admitted, I wonder what it would be like to explore without fear, to trade freely, to have allies and friends among the stars. But then I remember why we made this choice. We refuse to give up who we are, what we are, how we think and fight and survive. That's worth any price. She looked at the star charts at the vast galaxy beyond their borders. We're not alone because we're afraid of them. We're alone because they're afraid of us. And maybe that's how it should be. The galaxy needs someone who refuses to compromise, who stands as an example that strength and independence still matter. We're that example. Even if it means we're isolated forever. Even then, Chen said firmly. Because the day we give up that isolation, the day we let them dictate how we should be, is the day we stop being human. And I would rather die than let that happen. She returned to her desk to the reports and readiness assessments that filled her days. Somewhere in the galaxy, Captain Issa was telling her story. Somewhere else, the Council was voting on new protocols. And everywhere, species were learning to respect the borders. But Chen knew the truth. Peace was temporary. War was always waiting. And humanity would be ready when it came. They always were. 10 years had passed since the Vraxian fleet had entered human space and never returned. 10 years since the Galactic Council had reaffirmed the Treaty of Titan's moon. 10 years of peace, of respect for borders, of careful avoidance of the sector, marked with warnings, in 12 dead languages. But peace, as Captain Sarah Chen had predicted, was never permanent. In the neutral zone between Council space and human territory, a small station floated. It had been built carefully, precisely on the border, touching neither side. The station was a marvel of diplomatic architecture, half of it designed for Council species, half designed for humans with a central meeting chamber that both could use. This was Ambassador Station, and today it would host the first official communication between humanity and the Galactic Council in 800 years. Ambassador General Marcus Chen stood in the human section of the station, looking through the reinforced viewport at the Council vessel approaching. He was tall for a human with dark hair graying at the temples and the same sharp eyes as his mother. Yes, Marcus was Sarah Chen's son, born after the Vraxian incident, raised in a civilization that had just reminded the galaxy why they stayed isolated. Nervous? His aide, Lieutenant Park, asked, terrified. Marcus admitted, My mother fought to keep us separate. Now I'm here to start bringing us together. What if I'm wrong? What if opening dialogue is a mistake? The Council voted for this meeting, Park reminded him. They want to talk. That's progress, or it's a trap, Marcus said darkly. We won't know until it happens. On the Council ship, Matriarch Valara prepared for her own journey to the station. She had watched civilizations rise and fall for 12,000 years, but she had never been as uncertain as she was now. Humanity was a paradox, a species so dangerous that they had to be isolated, yet so principled that they honored the isolation perfectly. Matriarch, her aide said, the human delegation has arrived at the station. They're waiting in their section. Have they brought weapons? Belshara asked. Our sensors detect standard personal defense equipment, nothing more. They're following the protocols exactly. Of course they are, Valara said. Humans may be warriors, but they're not cheaters. If they agree to terms, they honor them. That's what makes them both terrifying and trustworthy. The meeting chamber was a neutral space, filled with adaptive atmosphere that could support both silicon and carbon-based life. When Marcus entered from the human side and Valara from the Council side, they stopped studying each other across the empty room. Matriarch Valara, Marcus said formally, on behalf of humanity, I thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Ambassador Chen, Belshara replied, her crystalline voice harmonizing through the translation field. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for your willingness to communicate. They moved to the center of the room where a simple table had been placed. As they sat, Marcus in a chair, Valara settling her crystalline mass onto a specially designed platform, the tension was palpable. I will be honest with you, Ambassador, Velshara began. Many council members oppose this meeting. They fear humanity. They remember the civilizing war. They saw what happened to the Vraxian fleet. They believe that any contact with your species will lead to war. And yet you came, Marcus said, because isolation cannot last forever. Velshara replied. 800 years is a long time, but it is not eternity. Eventually, circumstances will force interaction. Better to establish communication now on our terms than to wait for an emergency that forces contact under bad conditions. Marcus nodded. We agree. My mother once told me that the borders protect the Council more than they protect us. But she also said that maybe someday we could find a way to coexist without fear. This is that attempt. Your mother is Captain Sarah Chen. Belchura said. I have studied her transmissions, her tactics, her words. She is a formidable person. She's also retired now, Marcus said with a slight smile. At 78, she finally agreed to let younger people take over. But her lessons remain. She taught me that strength without wisdom is just violence, that power without restraint is just destruction. Humanity has power, matriarch. We have strength, but we need wisdom. Maybe the Council can help with that. And what can humanity offer the Council? Velshara asked. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Perspective. See, the Council has been at peace for so long that you've forgotten what war really means. You have rules for combat, conventions for conflict. You fight wars like games with agreed-upon rules. That works fine until you meet someone who doesn't play by your rules.
You mean like humanity?
Veller said. No, Marcus said. I mean like the next species that refuses to be civilized. Because we won't be the last. Somewhere in the galaxy, another species is evolving, developing weapons, learning to fight. Eventually, they'll reach the stars. And they might not be as reasonable as we are. You call yourselves reasonable. Valara's tone was almost amused. We made a treaty and honored it for 800 years, Marcus pointed out. We could have left our space at any time. We could have conquered weakly defended systems. We could have struck at the Council from surprise, but we didn't. We stayed where we agreed to stay. That's reasonable. Velshara considered this. He was right. Humanity could have broken the treaty countless times, but they never had. Even when the Vraxians invaded, the humans sent one survivor back with a warning instead of launching a counterattack into Council space. What do you propose? She asked. Cultural exchange, Marcus said. Limited, controlled, but real. Let some of your scientists study our technology. Not the weapons, but the underlying principles. Let us study yours. Let our historians share stories. Let our artists see each other's work. Let us understand each other not as threats but as neighbors who happen to live separately. That is dangerous. Valara said, what if understanding leads to conflict? What if our species are too different to coexist peacefully? Then we'll find out before an emergency forces the issue. Marcus replied, right now, the Council knows us only as warriors. We know the Council only as the civilizations that attacked us. Neither side has the full picture. That ignorance is more dangerous than knowledge. Over the next several hours, they talked. Marcus explained the human perspective. A species that had fought countless wars against itself, learned the hard lessons of total warfare, and decided that the only way to preserve peace was to be too strong to attack. Velshara explained the Council perspective. Species that had evolved past physical conflict, that valued cooperation over competition, that saw war as a failure of civilization. We are not so different, Marcus said eventually. You want peace. We want peace. The difference is how we achieve it. You achieve it through understanding and cooperation. We achieve it through strength and deterrence. Both methods work in their own way, but your method requires constant vigilance. Valara observed. You can never rest, never relax your guard. That must be exhausting. It is, Marcus admitted. Every human child learns military strategy. Every civilian knows emergency protocols. Every station can become a fortress. We don't have the luxury of peace that you have. But that's the price we pay for freedom. Is it worth it? Valara asked quietly. Marcus looked at her, and his expression was serious. Ask me that question in another 100 years. If we're still isolated, still watching the borders, still preparing for the next invasion, then maybe it wasn't worth it. But if we can find a way to engage with the galaxy while remaining ourselves, to contribute without compromising, to have allies without surrendering our principles, then yes, it will have been worth everything. The meeting continued for days. They discussed technology, culture, history, and philosophy. They debated the nature of peace and war. They argued about the civilizing war and who was at fault, but they never came close to violence. Instead, they came to understanding. I have a proposal, Velshara said on the 5th day. A formal one to take back to the council. We establish a permanent diplomatic station here on the border. Representatives from humanity and the council meet regularly to exchange information, discuss concerns, and prevent misunderstandings. No military alliance, no economic treaties, no political entanglements, just communication. My government would accept that, Marcus said carefully, but with conditions. The station remains exactly on the border. Neither side crosses into the other's territory. All meetings are recorded and made public to both populations. And most importantly, the military border remains. Human ships do not enter council space. Council ships do not enter human space, ever. Agreed, Valara said. The borders stay. They must stay. Too many species in the council still fear humanity. Removing the borders would cause panic. We don't want the borders removed, Marcus said. We like our isolation, but we also recognize that total isolation is unsustainable. This is a middle path, separate but communicating. When Marcus returned to human space, he was greeted by his mother at the border station. Sarah Chen was older now, her hair gray, her movement slower, but her eyes were still sharp. How did it go? She asked. Better than expected, Marcus admitted. Felchara is wise, ancient. She understands that both sides have legitimate concerns. We agreed to regular diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, but the borders stay firm. Sarah nodded approvingly. Good. The borders protect us. Never forget that. I won't, Marcus promised. But Mother, I also learned something. The council isn't our enemy. They never really were. They're just afraid. Fear makes people dangerous, Sarah warned. Afraid people do foolish things. True, Marcus said, but understanding can reduce fear, not eliminate it. We'll always be dangerous to them, and they'll always be a potential threat to us. But maybe we can turn that mutual danger into mutual respect. Sarah looked at her son for a long moment. You're braver than I was, she said finally. I fought to keep us separate because I feared what would happen if we engaged. You're trying to find a way to engage safely. Maybe your generation will succeed where mine couldn't. We're standing on your shoulders, Mother, Marcus said. You bought us time, space, and security. Now we can use those gifts to build something better. News of the diplomatic meeting spread throughout the galaxy. Reactions were mixed. Some species were hopeful, seeing it as a first step toward bringing humanity into the galactic community. Others were terrified, viewing any human engagement as the beginning of an invasion. Captain Issa, now an independent consultant traveling the galaxy, heard the news while teaching at a military academy on the Quillian homeworld. She had spent 10 years telling the story of the Vraxian fleet, warning against entering human space. Now humans were voluntarily opening communication. Does this change your message? A young Quillian officer asked her. No, Issa said firmly. The message remains the same. Don't enter human space. The treaty stands. The borders stay. What's changed is that we now have a way to understand humans without threatening them. That's progress, not a threat. But if we understand them better, won't that make us want to engage more? Another student asked. Probably, Issa admitted. Understanding usually leads to curiosity. But that's why the diplomatic station is on the border, not inside human space. We can satisfy our curiosity safely through designated channels, without risking another incident like the one that killed my fleet. She pulled up the old footage, now 10 years old, but still powerful. Never forget what happened when we ignored the warnings. Never forget that humans are willing to defend themselves. Absolutely. And never forget that the only reason we have peace is because both sides honor the treaty. On the other side of the galaxy, in a quiet system far from both human and council space, something else was happening. A new species had just achieved faster-than-light travel. They called themselves the Kororath, and they were aggressive, militaristic, and unaware of galactic politics. The Kororath had no interest in joining the council. They saw space as territory to be conquered, resources to be claimed, and weaker species to be dominated. They had fought brutal wars on their homeworld before unifying under a military dictatorship. Now, they were ready to bring that same philosophy to the stars. Their first scouting missions found empty systems, undefended planets, and what looked like easy conquests. The galaxy, they decided, was weak and ripe for taking. They began to build a war fleet, planning their expansion, marking the most valuable systems to attack first. One of those systems was on the edge of human space. The The Korath had never heard of humans. They had never heard of the Treaty of Titan's Moon. They had never heard about the civilizing war or the Vraxian incident. They saw only a well-developed system with no visible defenses and decided it would be their first major conquest. In human space, automated early warning systems detected the Korath ships 3 months before they would reach the border. The signals were analyzed, the ships studied, the technology assessed. Humanity watched as a new player entered the galactic stage, one that seemed to be heading straight for them. "They're not council ships," an analyst reported to the Defense Command. "New species, unknown technology, aggressive posture based on their movements, and they're heading for Sector 7. "That's right on our border," the commander said. "Do they know about us?" "Unlikely. They're new to space travel. They probably have no idea about galactic politics or the treaty. Then they're about to get a very harsh education," the commander said grimly. "Activate border defenses, move fleet assets into position, and someone notify Ambassador Chen. If these newcomers cross the border, we need to know if we're still operating under the same rules as with the Vraxians." Marcus received the message while still at the diplomatic station. He immediately contacted Matriarch Valara. "We have a situation," he said without preamble. "A new species called the Korath is approaching our border. They appear to be hostile and unaware of our existence. What does the Council know about them?" Shara accessed her databases. "The Korath. Yes, we detected their first FTL flights 3 months ago. We sent a standard greeting inviting them to join the Council. They responded with threats and demands for submission. We marked them as a hostile species and placed them under observation." "They're heading for our space," Marcus said. "If they cross the border, what happens?" "The treaty still stands," Valara said firmly. "If they enter human space, they do so without Council protection. We will not intervene on their behalf." "But Marcus, perhaps this is an opportunity." "What do you mean?" "The Corps don't know about humans. They don't know about the borders or the treaty. If you intercept them before they cross, if you warn them away, you could prevent another massacre, and you could show the galaxy that humanity can exercise restraint even when provoked." Marcus considered this. "You want us to be merciful to a species that might attack us. I want you to show that humanity has evolved beyond just defense. Belshara said that you can be strong and wise, powerful and restrained. The Vraxians invaded and died. If the Korath make the same mistake and die, the galaxy will see a pattern. But if the Corps warned and turn away, the galaxy will see that humanity can be something more than warriors. And if they don't turn away after we warn them," Velshar's crystalline form pulsed, "then the galaxy will see that you tried, that the blood is on their hands, not yours. Either way, you gain respect." Marcus made a decision. "Well, try. I'll recommend that our fleet intercept them in neutral space before they reach the border. We'll give them one chance to turn back. After that, you do what you must," Shara said. "But trying for peace first, that's the action of a civilization, not just a military force." The human fleet moved into position in neutral space, far from their border, but directly in the path of the approaching Korath ships. 3 human vessels against 20 Korath warships. The humans were outnumbered, but they were ready. When the Korath fleet detected the human ships, they were confused. They had encountered no other species in this region. They sent a communication demanding identification. The response came from Commander Rodriguez, of the UEF Vigilant. "This is Commander Maria Rodriguez, of the United Earth Defense Force. You are approaching human territory. We are here to inform you that the space ahead is restricted. You must change course immediately." The Korath commander laughed. "We recognize no restrictions. Space belongs to those strong enough to take it. If you are here to challenge us, then fight. If you are here to surrender, then submit." "We are here to warn you," Rodriguez said patiently. 1 kilometer ahead is a boundary. Beyond that boundary is human space. By interstellar treaty, any unauthorized entry is an act of war. We will defend our territory. Absolutely. Turn back now, and no one needs to die today. 3 ships against 20. The Corps commander sneered. "You're either insane or suicidal. We will destroy you and take whatever lies beyond." Rodriguez's voice hardened. "You've been warned. What happens next is your choice." The Corps ships accelerated toward the human vessels, weapons charging. They expected an easy victory. They had superior numbers, and their weapons had never failed against any opponent. What they got instead was a demonstration of why the Galactic Council feared humanity. The battle lasted 6 minutes. When it was over, 15 Korath ships were destroyed. 3 were heavily damaged but intact, and 2 had fled. The 3 human ships were undamaged. Not even their shields had been significantly stressed. Commander Rodriguez sent one final transmission to the surviving Korath ships. Take this message to your people. The territory beyond this point is human space. No one enters without permission. This is the only warning you will receive. Share what happened here, learn from it, and never return. The Korath ships limped away, carrying news of the devastating defeat. Their military dictatorship would spend months analyzing what had gone wrong, how 3 ships had destroyed 15, how their superior numbers had meant nothing, and across the galaxy, the story spread once again. Humanity had tried peace. They had offered a warning. They had given the Korath a choice. And when that choice was rejected, they had demonstrated their power decisively, but without cruelty. They had even let survivors escape to spread the tale. Captain Issa heard the news and smiled grimly. That's new, she said to her students. 10 years ago, humans would have destroyed the entire fleet. Now they let survivors go to carry the message. Maybe Ambassador Chen is right. Maybe humanity is evolving. Does that make them less dangerous? A student asked. No, Issa said. It makes them more. A warrior who knows when not to kill is far more terrifying than one who always kills because it means they're choosing restraint, not unable to follow through, and a choice can always be reversed. In the neutral zone, Marcus met with Velar again. You heard? He asked. The entire galaxy heard, Velara replied. You intercepted them in neutral space. You offered warning. You demonstrated force without cruelty, and you let survivors carry the tale. Ambassador Chen, you may have just shown the galaxy a new side of humanity, or confirmed their fears that were too dangerous to interact with, Marcus said. Perhaps both, Felshara admitted. But I will tell you this. The Council just held an emergency session. The vote was unanimous. The diplomatic initiative continues. Your restraint proved that engagement with humanity is possible. You could have annihilated the Korath. Instead, you educated them. That distinction matters. Marcus looked through the viewport at the space between human and Council territory. It's going to be a long road, isn't it? Building trust, reducing fear, learning to coexist. Yes, Belshara agreed. But for the first time in 800 years, it feels possible. Your mother's generation built the walls. Your generation might build the bridges. As long as both the walls and bridges are strong, perhaps we can have both security and cooperation. One can hope, Marcus said softly. One can hope. 50 years had passed since Ambassador Marcus Chen first met with Matriarch Velar at the neutral zone. 50 years of careful diplomacy, limited cultural exchange, and maintained borders. The Treaty of Titan's Moon still stood stronger than ever. But the fear that had once surrounded it had begun to transform into something else. Respect. The galaxy had changed. New species joined the Council regularly, and each one was immediately taught about humanity, not as monsters or demons, but as neighbors who chose isolation and defended it absolutely. The lesson had been learned and relearned through the Rexian incident, the Korath warning, and a dozen smaller encounters over the decades. The rule remained simple. No species enters human space, and the galaxy had finally accepted that this was not negotiable. On Earth, in a retirement home overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Sarah Chen sat in her favorite chair, watching the sunset. She was 128 years old, kept alive by advanced medical technology and sheer stubbornness. Her son Marcus, now 80 himself, sat beside her. They want to name a ship after you, Marcus said. The UF Sarah Chen, a new dreadnought, largest in the fleet. Sarah smiled slightly. What did you tell them? That you'd probably refuse the honor, Marcus said. I would, Sarah confirmed. Ships should be named after concepts, not people. Name it something like vigilance or determination, something that reminds future generations why we're here. The treaty has held for 850 years, Marcus said. That's longer than most civilizations have existed. Do you think it will last forever? Sarah was quiet for a moment, looking out at the ocean. No, she said finally. Nothing lasts forever. Eventually circumstances will change. Maybe we'll change. Maybe the Council will change. Maybe someone will find a way to force contact that neither side can refuse. But for now, for these centuries, we've proven something important. What's that? That peace doesn't require friendship, Sarah said. That different philosophies can coexist if both sides respect boundaries. The council wanted us to be like them, civilized by their standards. We refused. They attacked. We defended. And in the end, we found a balance where both sides can thrive without destroying each other. Some species still think we're monsters hiding in the dark, Marcus said. Let them think that, Sarah replied. Fear keeps people honest. Respect keeps them peaceful. We have both. That's better than being liked but not respected. Marcus smiled. You know, Matriarch Valara said something similar when we last met. She said that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't our technology or our tactics. It was our example, that sovereignty matters, that a species has the right to be itself, even if others don't understand or approve. Valara is still alive, Sarah asked with surprise. Silicon-based beings live a long time. Marcus said she's been guiding the council for 12,000 years now. She remembers when humans first reached the stars. She remembers the civilizing war. She remembers everything. Then she remembers why the treaty exists. Sarah said firmly. Good. As long as people like her remember, the peace will hold. In the Galactic Council chamber, a new crisis was unfolding. A species called the Gen Collective had been expanding aggressively, conquering smaller civilizations, and forcing them into their empire. The Council had tried diplomacy, economic sanctions, and limited military intervention. Nothing worked. The Zen were too powerful, too determined, and too willing to use weapons that others considered excessive. They're approaching Sector 7739, an intelligence officer reported. 300 Zen warships are moving toward the human border. We don't know if they intend to enter, or if they're just testing the boundaries. The council erupted in panicked discussion. The Zen were a serious military threat, possibly the strongest empire the galaxy had seen in millennia. If they entered human space, what would happen? Would humanity destroy them as they had the Vraxians? And if the Gen survived, would they bring the secret of defeating humanity back to the Council's enemies? Shara, now ancient even by her species standards, called for calm. The treaty must be honored by all sides, she said. If the Gen enter human space, they do so without Council protection. We will not intervene to save them, and we will not hold humanity responsible for defending their territory. But Matriarch, a younger ambassador, protested. The Zen are too powerful. If humanity destroys their fleet, the Gen will declare war on everyone. They'll blame the Council for not warning them. We have warned them, Felchara said tiredly, repeatedly. We sent them all the historical records. We showed them what happened to the Vraxians. They dismissed it as propaganda. Some species must learn lessons the hard way. In human space, Commander Jessica Park, daughter of Lieutenant Park, who had served with Ambassador Chen decades ago, watched the Gen fleet approach. She commanded the defense platform Guardian's Watch, one of 40 orbital fortresses protecting the Sol system. Behind her, thousands of human ships waited in stealth positions, just as they had 50 years ago when the Vraxians came. They're 3 hours from the border, her tactical officer reported. No attempt at communication, no course changes. They're coming straight for us. Have we sent warning, boys? Park asked. Standard warnings broadcast in their language, and 12 others, the communications officer confirmed. They've acknowledged receiving them, but haven't responded. Then they know what they're doing, Park said. Bring all defensive systems online. Prepare stealth fleet for immediate response, and someone wake up Ambassador Chen. If this turns into a fight, he needs to know immediately. Marcus Chen received the call in the middle of the night. At 80, he didn't sleep well anyway, so the interruption was almost welcome. He listened to the report, dressed quickly, and headed to the command center. Can we try the same approach we used with the Korath? He asked Commander Park when he arrived. Intercept them in neutral space. Give them a warning. Demonstrate force if necessary. The Gen are different from the Korath, Park said. They've studied our previous encounters. They know about the Vraxians. They know about the Korath, and they're coming anyway. Either they think they're strong enough to defeat us, or they're testing us intentionally. Why would they test us? Marcus asked. To see if we are as strong as the stories say, Park replied. Or to provoke us into attacking first so they can justify a larger war. The Zine conquer through creating conflict, then claiming they were defending themselves. It's their pattern. Marcus thought about this. So if we intercept them, we're falling into their trap. But if we let them cross the border, we're risking our security. Correct, Park said. Difficult choice. Contact Shara. Marcus decided immediately. If the Gen are trying to create an incident, the Council needs to know our response is purely defensive. The connection to the neutral zone station was established quickly. Belchara appeared on the screen, her crystalline form dimmer than Marcus remembered. She was old, truly ancient now, and it showed. Ambassador Chen, she said, I assume you're calling about the Zen fleet. They're approaching our border, Marcus confirmed. Matriarch, we believe they're trying to provoke an incident. If we intercept them in neutral space, they'll claim we attacked without provocation. If we wait until they cross the border, they'll have a foothold in our territory. Either way, they win politically. Then what do you propose? Falara asked. Let them cross, Marcus said, and several officers behind him gasped. Let them cross the border. Let them enter our space, but we don't fire first. We surround them. We lock weapons on them. We make it clear they're in a kill box, but we give them one chance, just one, to turn around and leave. That's incredibly dangerous, Valara said. What if they attack while inside your territory? Then we defend ourselves, Marcus said simply. And the entire galaxy will see through every recording, every sensor log, every transmission that they fired first, that we offered mercy and they rejected it. The Zine won't be able to claim victim status. The Council will support this approach, Valara said after a moment. We will broadcast our own sensor data showing the Gen entering human space without permission and being offered a chance to retreat. If they attack, the responsibility is entirely theirs. 2 hours later, the Gen fleet crossed the border into human space. Immediately, as it happened 50 years before with the Varaxians, thousands of human ships materialized out of stealth. The Gen fleet found itself surrounded, outnumbered 5 to 1, with weapons locked onto every single ship. The Gen commander, Admiral Kraith, received the transmission from Commander Park. Shen Fleet, you have entered human space without authorization. This is a violation of the Treaty of Titan's Moon in an act of aggression. You have one opportunity to withdraw. Turn your ships around, exit our territory, and no action will be taken against you. You have 30 minutes to comply. Kraith studied the tactical display. His intelligence reports had said humans were advanced, but this was beyond what he had expected. His 300 ships were completely surrounded by thousands of human vessels, all of which showed weapon signatures far beyond his own technology. But the Zen Collective did not back down, ever. Their entire culture was built on the principle of domination. To retreat would be to show weakness, and weakness led to conquest by others. Human vessels, Creraith broadcast. We do not recognize your claim to this territory. We do not acknowledge your treaty. Space belongs to those strong enough to hold it. If you attempt to stop us, you will face the full might of the Zine Collective. 29 minutes, Park said calmly. The Zine fleet continued forward, pushing deeper into human space. Human ships matched their movement, maintaining the surrounding formation. It was like watching a bubble move through water. The human fleet flowed around the Zen, never losing formation, never giving them an opening. 15 minutes, Park announced. Kraith was sweating now. His tactical officers were reporting that human weapons tracking was perfect, that their ships could maneuver faster than anything in the Gen military, that their stealth technology had allowed them to position this entire fleet without detection. Everything the intelligence reports had said was true, but still, the collective's doctrine was clear. Never retreat. 5 minutes, Park said. Admiral Kraith, this is your final warning. Turn back now, or face destruction. In the Zin flagship's bridge, junior officers were openly afraid. Some were whispering about the reports from the Vraxian incident, about how 40,000 soldiers had died in hours. But Kraith could not show weakness. The collective was watching. We will not retreat, he said firmly. Time's up, Park said quietly. Then on all frequencies, she broadcast. The Gen Collective has been warned and has refused to withdraw from human territory. All ships you are authorized to engage. Target weapons and engines only. Give them a chance to surrender. The human fleet opened fire, but not with their full arsenal. They used precision weapons targeting specific systems. Jin ships lost weapons, propulsion, communications, but their hulls remained intact. Life support was untouched. Within 10 minutes, the entire Gen fleet was disabled but alive. Kraith sat in his command chair, his ship powerless and drifting. Around him, 300 Gen vessels floated helplessly, surrounded by thousands of human ships that had dismantled them without breaking a sweat. Commander Park's face appeared on his screen. Admiral Crera, your fleet is now disabled. Your weapons are destroyed. Your engines are offline. But you're alive. All of you are alive. That was a choice we made. Why? Cray asked, his voice hollow. Why not kill us? Because we're not conquerors, Park said. We're defenders. You came into our space. You threatened us. We stopped you. That was necessary. But killing you wasn't necessary. You're no longer a threat, so you get to live. What now? Kra asked. Now Council vessels will enter our space with our permission to retrieve your ships and crews, Park explained. You'll be towed back across the border. You'll return to the Zen Collective, and you'll tell them what happened here. You'll tell them that humanity offered peace, and you rejected it. You'll tell them that we could have killed you but chose not to. And you'll tell them that if they ever enter our space again, the response will be the same. Total defeat, but with mercy, if possible. The Collective will see this as weakness, Kraith said bitterly. Then they're fools, Park said bluntly. Mercy from a position of strength isn't weakness. It's civilization. The galaxy has fought us for 850 years. They attacked us. We defended ourselves. They tested us. We proved our strength. Now we're showing that strength includes restraint. If the Collective can't understand that, they'll learn it the hard way next time. True to Park's word, Council ships entered human space. The first non-human vessels to do so peacefully in centuries. They attached tow lines to the disabled Gen ships and slowly pulled them back across the border. The entire operation was recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The reaction was unprecedented. Species that had feared humanity for centuries saw something different. Humans who could have massacred their enemies, but chose to disable and release them instead. It was the action of a civilization that was confident in its power, secure in its boundaries, and mature enough to know when killing wasn't necessary. The Gen Collective, facing the humiliation of having their fleet defeated and returned like disobedient children, withdrew from their aggressive expansion. The incident had shown them that there were powers in the galaxy they couldn't intimidate, territories they couldn't conquer. More importantly, it had shown them that strength didn't always mean destruction. In the council chamber, Shara addressed the assembly for what would be her final speech. At 12,000 years old, even silicon-based beings felt the weight of time. I have watched civilizations rise and fall, she said, her crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. I have seen empires conquer and collapse. I have witnessed war and peace, cooperation and conflict. And I have learned that the most dangerous species are not the ones who cannot be defeated, but the ones who choose not to destroy, even when they could. She gestured to the holographic display showing the Gen fleet being towed away by Council vessels. Humanity has shown us once again what they truly are. Not monsters, not demons, but a species that values freedom so highly they will defend it absolutely, yet values life enough to preserve it when possible. They are warriors who know when not to fight. They are powerful beings who choose restraint, and that makes them not our enemies, but perhaps our greatest teachers. What do you mean, matriarch? A young ambassador asked. The Council has spent 50,000 years pursuing peace through understanding. Belshara explained. We have succeeded in creating a civilization where war is rare and cooperation is common. But we achieved this by avoiding conflict, not by mastering it. Humanity took a different path. They mastered conflict so completely that they no longer need to use it. They prepared for war so thoroughly that they created peace. She paused, her ancient form pulsing slowly. Perhaps the future of galactic civilization lies not in the Council's path or humanity's path alone, but in a synthesis of both. We teach cooperation and understanding. Humans teach strength and determination. Together we could build something unprecedented, a civilization that is both peaceful and strong, understanding and unyielding, cooperative and free. Are you suggesting we integrate humanity into the Council? Someone asked. No, I said firmly. The borders must remain. Humanity needs its isolation, and we need the boundaries. But perhaps we can learn from each other, across those borders. Perhaps the next 1,000 years can be about building respect across differences, rather than eliminating differences to build harmony. On Earth in the retirement home, Sarah Chen watched the Council's broadcast. Tears ran down her weathered face. Marcus, she said to her son, who had come to watch with her. I think we might have done it. I think we might have actually done it. Done what, Mother? Shown them that freedom is worth defending. Sarah said that compromise isn't always the answer, that sometimes the right thing to do is to say no, and mean it, even when everyone else says you should say yes. We stayed true to ourselves for 850 years. We fought when we had to. We showed mercy when we could. And maybe finally they understand. The treaty will hold, Marcus asked. For a while longer at least, Sarah said. Maybe another 100 years, maybe another 1,000. Eventually, something will change. But we've proven the principle. A species can choose its own path, defend that choice, and still be part of the larger community. We don't have to be alone to be free, and we don't have to surrender to be connected. She reached out and took her son's hand. You'll carry this forward. Your generation, and the ones after. The borders stay, but the dialogue continues. Keep us strong, keep us vigilant, but also keep us human. Capable of mercy, capable of growth, capable of hope. I will, Marcus promised. We all will. Sarah Chen died 3 days later, quietly in her sleep. She was given a military funeral with full honors. Representatives from the Galactic Council were invited to attend via holographic link from the neutral zone. They watched as humanity mourned one of their greatest defenders, a woman who had shaped their destiny for nearly a century. Belshara, too old now to continue as matriarch, but still revered throughout the galaxy, sent a personal message. Sarah Chen taught the galaxy that strength without cruelty is the highest form of power. She defended her people absolutely, but never sought to harm others unnecessarily. She is proof that warriors can be wise, that power can be restrained, and that isolation can be a choice rather than a punishment. The galaxy is lesser for her passing, but greater for her having lived. The years continued to pass. The treaty held. The borders remained, but the dialogue between humanity and the Council grew stronger, more complex, more nuanced. Cultural exchanges became regular events. Scientific cooperation occurred across the neutral zone. Artists from both sides shared their work, finding common ground and creativity, even when they couldn't agree on politics. 100 years after the Gen incident, Ambassador David Park, grandson of Jessica Park, great-grandson of the original Lieutenant Park, met with the new council matriarch, a gaseous being named Thura, who had taken over after Velshara finally retired. Matriarch, David said, I have a question that my grandfather asked his grandmother, who asked her mother. How long can this continue? The separation, the borders, the careful distance. Dedezra's form swirled thoughtfully. How long do you want it to continue? Forever, David said, immediately. We've seen what happens when species try to make us conform. We fought those battles. We want our freedom at great cost. We won't surrender it for convenience or politics. Then it will continue forever, Teysa said simply. The Council has learned that some species are meant to walk their own path. Humanity is one such species. Your isolation is not a failure of integration. It is a success of self-determination, and the galaxy accepts this. The galaxy has no choice, there said, with what might have been humor. You've made it very clear that entry to human space is fatal to anyone who attempts it, but you've also shown that you can be reasonable neighbors, willing to communicate, willing to help in shared crisis, willing to contribute to galactic civilization without compromising your sovereignty. That is enough. David looked out at the stars visible through the station viewport. You know what I think? I think we're going to be doing this for thousands of years, talking across borders, cooperating at a distance, being part of the galaxy while remaining separate from it. It's not what anyone wanted originally, but maybe it's what everyone needs. Perhaps Dedezra agreed. The galaxy is vast enough for many different approaches to civilization. The Council's way works for most species. Humanity's way works for humans. And the existence of both makes the galaxy richer than if everyone followed the same path. My great-grandmother Sarah used to say that peace doesn't require friendship. David said just mutual respect and honored boundaries. Sarah Chen was wise. Thrayer said the Council archives contain all her speeches and transmissions. She is studied by our military Mies as an example of strategic thinking, by our philosophers as an example of principled determination, by our historians as an example of how a single individual can shape the destiny of civilizations. She'd probably hate being that famous, David said with a smile. She just wanted to keep humanity safe. She did more than that. Thesura said she kept humanity free, and in doing so, she reminded the entire galaxy that freedom matters, that sovereignty matters, that the right to choose your own path matters. The Galactic Council existed for 50,000 years before humanity reached the stars. We had answers to every question, solutions to every problem. Then you arrived and asked a question we couldn't answer. What if we don't want your solutions? That question changed everything. In human space, children still learned military tactics in school. Civilians still practiced emergency protocols. Every station could still become a fortress in minutes. The vigilance never ended. The preparations never ceased. But now, alongside the military training, children also learned about the Council, about the thousands of species in the galaxy, about the different ways civilizations could organize themselves. And they learned about the Treaty of Titan's Moon, about Sarah Chen and Marcus Chen, and all the others who had defended humanity's right to be itself. They learned that strength without wisdom was tyranny, that power without restraint was destruction, and that isolation could be a choice rather than a curse. The borders remained, marked by warnings in 12 dead languages and 12 living ones. The defensive platforms hummed with power, always ready, never needed. The fleets patrolled in stealth, watching, waiting, but hoping never to fight. And in the neutral zone, human and council representatives met regularly, talking, learning, understanding each other a little better with each encounter. Not friends perhaps, but no longer enemies either, just neighbors with different philosophies. Respecting each other's boundaries, contributing to each other's growth, proving that civilization could take many forms, and all could coexist. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Some species are meant to walk alone, and humanity in its isolation had become both a warning and an inspiration. A warning of what happened when you tried to force conformity, and an inspiration showing that sovereignty could be defended, that principles could be maintained, and that a species could be both separate and connected, isolated and engaged, powerful and peaceful. No species entered human space, the treaty held, and the galaxy, vast and diverse, was richer for having neighbors who chose their own path and defended it absolutely. That was the price of arrogance, learning to respect others' choices. And that was the reward of determination, keeping the freedom to make those choices. In the end, both sides learned, both sides grew, and both sides found a way to coexist that honored their differences rather than erasing them. The stars shone on, indifferent to the struggles below. But among those stars, humanity stood as proof that there were many ways to reach for them, many paths to civilization, many definitions of success. They had chosen isolation over compromise, strength over submission, and in doing so had taught the galaxy that sometimes the greatest wisdom is knowing when to stand alone.